Hello, thank you a lot for being here. Thank you a lot to the committee for accepting this presentation. Yes, to tell you that what I am going to talk about is not what we are working in Colorado, as Edmundo presented me currently, but it comes from a period of very applied work I have been developing in my mother research institution in Barcelona in the CREAF. Well, I felt really, really happy at the beginning of this conference when the key speaker of the first conference just determined as a priority almost all things we are going to talk about in this presentation. I'm not going to talk about new improvements on soil biodiversity study, but of how to apply our knowledge or classic knowledge to apply the situation. This is mostly our role about how to use soil biodiversity to inform decision making, about how to raise awareness about soil diversity meaning, about which language to use to interact with different actors. And I am very happy to be able to present you what's the main awareness of the speaker, a clear example, applying example of how peasants and no scientists impose to politicians biodiversity, soil biodiversity as a key a mandatory indicator to evaluate land management and planning. And I like to tell you what was the way the supporting technical scientific team supported this way towards the introduction of the soil biodiversity in these processes. We are going to talk, we have been working in the framework of what's called social multi-criteria evaluation. For all of you that are not familiar with this methodology, this is a method, a framework developed by economists and intended to facilitate decision-making and clarity and equality of rights in decision-making in situations where we have to choose, we must choose among a finite number of alternatives that are supported by a great number of factors of actors with contrasting ideas about the alternatives and even about the criteria to use to evaluate those alternatives. The situation is particularly useful for land management, and normally in this situation you will have always a problem. So what soil multi-criteria evaluation defends is there is not a correct single, neither your alternative is not correct. There are viable consensual options you must help people to find. That's your mission there, not to impose your point of view. The steps to follow for one of those kinds of analysis is first one to determine, to find the actors, all the actors implying in the process, to study them deeply to find the alternative they are proposing, implicitly or explicitly, and to have them to take a decision, a position in front of the alternative of everybody, so pro, against, of indifference. So I don't propose this, but I can accept to have a deal about this. Second point is to, also with the actor, to reach a consensus about which criteria and indicators you are going to use to evaluate their alternatives. You choose the indicator with everybody in an long interaction process, and then you have as a technician, as a team, a researchers team, the measurement of the indicators is normally your work. If you can't extrapolate this, okay, you need numerical data. So most often for the environmental data, you're going to have demonstrative plots to look for data to see if really the alternative is going to improve or to deteriorate the index you have chosen. As a result of this, you have two interesting things. First, you have all the alternatives technically objectively ranked, And you have a very interesting thing that is the coalitions and power relationships, very expressed, like in a cluster. You have here all the groups that are the cluster, the group of friends that share their vision about the environmental problem we are working. It allows you to work with power. To play with this. So the case of study is in Nicaragua. You have this red dot in the north-central mountains of Nicaragua, close to the Honduras border. And this is, in your right, the area is a protected area, landscape of Miraflor Moropotente, particularly the red part that is the dry part of the dry tropical trees forest area. This is called Mesa de Moropotente. You see the tabular form, the flat form. You can see nothing with this. The flat form of the mountains, and the main characteristic is the dry tropical climate with rain concentrated in April from April to December with a very strong canicula. So drought is the main limitation for everything, for economy. We are talking about a place where 80% of the population is poor, and almost all this 80% is under extreme poverty. So the production is very low, and they rely strictly on land production. We got this kind of soils, but the main soils we were working in, there's more use our vertisols with 5.6 to 6 pH, but particularly the main characteristic is the physical constraints because of expansive soils, no? Physical damage because of this problem. The situation is really what motivated the starting of the study was what to do in front of situation of extreme degradation due to deforestation. The degradation is that height that all the hydrological cycle is disturbed. So now they have deforested everything, they have open place for cows to have gray pastures, but they have lost of the water, so the cows are dying equally. They cannot feed their calves, because they have no milk. So the deforestation is, you see, the critical. This is the landscape matrix. There is all pastures except for some small bands that design the former hydrological network. Don't think that they are really forests. I'm going to shoot them to show you them. This is the internal situation in those forests. They are not forests, they are pole stage 3 stands maintained in this situation for a lot of frequentation, a lot of human pressure for wood. So the big matrix is made of pastures of Aspalum notatum, what they call grama, and the things you can play with to reforestate or to use the different units of the landscape are mainly temporary shrubs. They are really temporary, and because they are managed by peasants. When they have enough place for the cows, they let them grow. When they need more place for the pastures, they cut it. Those you have here, twice the age of the cow, are 2 years old. So the rate of growing is very fast, and they also disappear very fast. And they have a very great internal biodiversity of plants. So the other units of the landscape are homogeneous, but the difference of composition in these shrubs is extremely high. The other element to play with in the pastures is the quantity of trees in the pastures, mainly Acacia pennatula, they call carbon, this species. You can find these isolated or also like this in closed non-specific stands. In both cases, this is favorized by them, by the peasants, to furnish shadow and also some food for the cows. There's a great discussion about this, because a lot of people allege that this is a nauseous tree, a bad tree, because you see that under the trees, the only thing you have is able to grow in is Oplismenus. This is Dyspoaceae. This is why the tree has a very high capacity of killing everybody. That is totally demonstrated. No? this is an aggressive tree that is very debated about what to do with this. Then, together with this human-induced heterogeneity, you have the natural seasonal dynamics. You have here the landscaping in the rain season, the same situation, the same place in the drought. And this is what you have about soils. During the drought, the forested areas and acacia areas are totally naked, bare, while you have a small protection of dead organic matter in the pastures. So the pasture is should be considered more favorable to soil conditions, maintenance during the drought because of this small protection. Well, we were called to help in taking decisions about what to do to arrange, to solve this situation, how to manage landscape, not only to protect the landscape, but to change totally the economic dynamics of the zone. So we are going to talk about a small part of the big project that lasted 5 years to take the decisions. After discarding a lot of scenarios, we arrived to the only solution accepted by all the actors was a reforestation of certain parts of the area. It could be a reforestation, or classic reforestation, assisted or spontaneous after putting out some cows, or well, increasing numbers in trees in pastures. In one case, we went to secondary dry tropical forest, and in the other case, we got improved silvopastoral systems. In one case, the defensor of this option were authorities, politicians, conservationist groups, and particularly the Ministry of Environment of Nicaragua. And the other side, and the big owners, the big landowners. And on the other side, we got all the small producers. There were more than 300 families in the study. Most of them small producers defending this other option. And agreeing, this was a very compact group that only differed about what to do with these acacias. Acacia yes, acacia no, and monospecific or open. And then we found, curiously, that soil biodiversity emerged as a criteria. How did we find this? We were evaluating in those situations, you have no resources enough to work with complicated analyticals, so all our work was evaluation of soil quality. We were following Altieri criteria that you can apply in a very organoleptic perception of soil. And we were also being contrasting the estimates of soil quality of the peasant leaders that know very well their place. And then, by this evaluation, they found the traces of soil biodiversity in their hands. So you see these small balls? This is it. We want this. So in a process of 6 months of interaction, we found they went to evaluate the value of the soil biodiversity for them, not only for their cultures, but also for what they call beauty. Beauty for them is very important because this is what relies their mind to the pristine system they came from. So it became a very important thing we were conducting, and we evaluated. So we have to evaluate this. I have tried to do this with the politicians before to get money for this kind of evaluation, and they told me, don't lose your time. We are talking about development. Be serious. So evaluate diversity of pastures, but not soil biodiversity. And suddenly we got this introduced by the peasants. So we structured this about these questions, about soil biodiversity and landscape, and we took epicurus arthropods as a proxy. Why arthropods? Because what we had to work was this. No technology, no microscope, just a binocular, nothing in the university in the area, and this is what we could afford to pay for. So what to do with this? Clearly, a pitfall trap. So let's go work with pitfall traps. So we choose the areas, 3 areas, 3 replicates of pasture shrubs and carbonal. We put three plots with 10 samples and pretended to follow these along the seasons. We started this in rain to find, in the second sampling of drought, that they had cut or shrubs, but that we had found a representative native forest lost there in the north. So this is an unbalanced design because this is what we got. We conducted the traps in the official way, and what I want to show you is a very short resume of what we found to help them to organize the landscape. We got that the activity in soil was clearly, as was expected, much higher in the rainy season than in the dry season. But, and it's what we got 87,000 animals to handle. 50% of them, almost, springtails, followed by tans, mites, and beetles and speeders. We took those first groups to work with them. We let the others aside. We got the main activity of the rainy season due to springtails, while due to ants in the dry seasons. So it's clear you have to monitor both seasons. For our surprise, the highest activity was recorded in pasture during rain, but in the bud tree, under the bud stands in the dry time, on the drought time, under acacia. And also, interestingly, during drought, we can compare the effect of acacia on this activity was much higher than the activity we found under native forests. So for the three principal groups, we worked, we didn't show these to the peasants, we used another kind of language with an estimate in the top, in the right, with, of the real species in both seasons, with curves you obtain when you add different units of land cover, so to get the gamma diversity of the landscape, and then with an OSIM to have difference in the communities. This is the same structure for the three pictures. So you can see for the collembola do not appear in the landscape during the drought. They are very sensitive to water. But during the rains, the higher biodiversity number of species, this is the proxy, is under acacia as usual. What gives that if you add patches of acacia to the pasture, you have an increase in the richness. Second scheme for beetles, but in this case we had beetles in both seasons. Again, in drought, carbonal is terribly rich in species. So what you have down is that if you add to the blue line of the pastures carbonal, you have a great increase of the biodiversity. So these animals are very sensitive, this group, to the structure of the landscape, particularly during drought, opposite to collembola that are sensitive during rain. We are treating now the results of ants. We are in the middle. We only have the results from the rain season. But again, look at the carbonal, richness of a species. We have the carbonal increasing, adding a lot of richness if you put it in the landscape. So this is a bit what we gave to the peasants in another format, this conclusion. If you want to increase the pigeons, arthropods richness in your land, you really should take care of putting this carbonal. Carbonal is very important for everybody in both seasons, particularly in the rainy season for everybody, and particularly important for Coleoptera families in the dry season. We are now looking for the reason of this. In fact, on the basis of all these, we have correlations with a lot of environmental factors we took, but this is not of the interest of the population. This is what they are looking for, particularly to make a pressure on the politician, is the part you have upstairs. So this is a very quick resume of 5 years of work that are now, the work is maintained by the local groups we have been working with. And I want to clarify that we have been working with experts for Colembla of the University, Autonomous University of Mexico. All the direction of this main framework is due to Giuseppe Munda, the father of this multi-criterial system, working with us from ICTA in Barcelona. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pilar. Now we have time for a couple of questions too. We're a bit behind schedule, but we'll try to have the 2 questions at least. Here, Natasha.
Thanks, that's a really fascinating talk, and the way that local people are interested in soil biodiversity is a really important factor. I just wondered if you could give us any further detail about how those results were interpreted by the policymakers that the people were speaking to.
Excuse me, about?
Sorry. I wondered if you could give us a little bit more information about the impact of these results when they were presented to the policymakers.
We have there are many results, very interesting results from the sociological point of view. We are working, everybody, this social procedure we followed is very intense, really intense, and we had to sit, to have all the actors sit, and these are thousands of actors. Everybody responded very correctly, except politicians, as usual. So we are working on an area very delicate, very marked by the war and by the conflicts, internal conflicts. And these people was totally, their feeling was of indefension. So we have been working there with our counterpart in Nicaragua, the National University. That's a local institution. A lot of their children are working with us, so they are the children of the peasants. And the first consequence was that they wrote a communique to the minister, telling them that they had found finally something to represent them. They wanted the politician in their table. They wanted to have the National University of Nicaragua like an representative because they trusted them. So the first consequence of this process was these people had somebody to be confident about a process to lead the change of the landscape. And then, concerning particularly what they did with this, they are still monitoring. There is one indicator. We have a lot of other indicators because the main condition we found for them to allow the reforestation was we had to increase. So if you reforest, you are putting trees where the cows were eating. So if you have to reforest, if you lose 1 hectare of terrain, you have to compensate with increasing the production of the pasture in the remaining areas. Otherwise, they are not ready to reforestate. So now we are following a deal of experimental applied and demonstrative places on, we are improving the pasture production and deciding with them in scattered meetings or to put these areas of reforestation with acacias or not. This is the situation is now in this moment, in this situation.
So you actually show that the acacia trees have the highest diversity from all the treatments, but they were also the most different from native forest.
Yes.
I can imagine if I show, some groups of, let's say, birds, I might found them much more abundant in the city center than in the nature. And I would be really aware to interpret it in a way that the city center generally promote diversity and is a good decision to turn everything to city center to promote diversity.
Well, no, first of all, the acacia is not, this bad thing is not an exotic. It has been always there. So if you examine the composition of the shrubs, when you put outside the cones, acacia is one of the first things that start to reproduce. So this is a native there. This is a native that has been always managed by the peasants in their faubourg. So there is I will not consider acacia as a urban center. This is a very particular ecosystem that has been historically there. So I don't think that there are a species in the middle of this. Jose Palacios has discovered 3 new species of collembola, and there are 2 new species of labulvenials living in the coleoptera. So, and they were not especially in the acacia, in the acacia stands. I think that there is not this is very weird because this is very dry environment. So the drought is stronger under acacia than in the open pasture in summer. I think this is simply due to the biggest. I have been very conscious, but what is stimulated particularly in the acacia forest are the groups depending on wood. So acacia produces a lot of wood that is not in the soil, but it is dead and hanging from the trees. I think this is this availability because of there are more people depending on wood. But I consider this like a natural and native plant.